In this video, I'm going to show you how to use PostgreSQL with Jupyter Notebook. In the last videos, I already show you how to install PostgreSQL and also QGIS, and also show you how to load the data into the database. You can also do query some data set from the database. And since we have been using Jupyter Notebook for the previous videos about Google's engine, so it would be nice that if we can use the database, we can retrieve the data from the database using Jupyter Notebook so that you can pass some data into some other pipelines, because Jupyter Notebook is just so popular for data science. And so it would be nice that we can have a kind of a pipeline that you can do some spatial query using the database, and then once you retrieve the data, you can use the data for further analysis, because the database is for data management. If you want some, for example, spatial analysis, if you want to integrate your data with some other data set that's not in the database, you might want to extract the data from the database. So this is what this video is about. I'm going to walk through the steps that how you can set up PostgreSQL so they can use it in Jupyter Notebook. First, let's go to you can also open the PG admin. So in the last video, we already created the database, for example, the SDB, and this is the database that we have been using. Also, if you look at the tables, we already loaded some spatial data into the database. If you haven't loaded the data, you can watch my previous video how to set this up. And once you have the database, then we can go to the website here. I just create a new website, postgis.gshub.org. So this is the link. The link is also in the description. So if you want to look at the source code, you can click the upper right corner here, the icon. Go click the repository. It should take you to the website. So this is the repository where I'm going to host all the data for this tutorial series. And you can also look at, for example, here the sample data set and some of the commands. So in the last video, I show you how to do spatial SQL queries for non-spatial data, and these are some of the commands that we have been using. And if you see my last video, you probably know that, okay, at that time I had to type this command line one by one, so it's very time consuming. If we can use it in Jupyter Notebook, you will be able to see the command directly, and you can also see the output. So if you go to the repository and then click the link here, the URL, postgis.gshub. So right now this is kind of a book in progress. I'm going to have more and more content. Right now there's not much here, but you can click the installation. So this is what we are going to go through here in this video, how to set up the conda environment, and then how you can actually connect the database so you can do the spatial query. In this way, it's much better, because when I'm teaching, then you can directly see the command line, the spatial SQL statement, and then you can also see the output beneath in here. If the output is too long, I can also hide the output, and this is pretty nice. You can also connect using other Python packages, and then you can, for example, you can do the query, then you can return the data as a data frame. So basically, you can use other Python packages to further analyze the data. Okay, so first let's set up the conda environment. And so this is the environment we're going to set up. We will need some conda packages. You can open your Anaconda prompt, and you go to start menu, and then Anaconda prompt. If you're using Linux or Mac OS, it's the same. So you can just open your terminal. Then we can create the conda environment. So keep that in mind, conda create -n and then SQL. So SQL, this is the name of the environment that we're going to create, and we are also going to install Python into this conda environment. So if we don't specify the version, it's going to by default create the latest version 3.9. You can directly copy, or you can just type the command line. So I'm going to paste in here and then just hit enter. It should take a couple seconds. Okay, and then just type Y. It should create the conda environment. Then we need to activate the conda environment, and then we can install Python packages into the environment. So again, I'm just going to copy. You're welcome to type the command if you want. Control V, paste. Now on the left side here, you should see this one SQL. So that means right now we are within the Conda environment. Then we can start installing all the packages. Again, I'm going to copy and open the Anaconda prompt. Control V. This might be copy paste again. Here, right click. So if you right click, it's automatically paste the command and then just hit enter. I will highly recommend that you create, just follow the steps to create a new Conda environment. If you already have some environment, sometimes it might take a while to resolve the dependencies. So it's a good practice to create a fresh environment. Then usually you should be able to repeat the process. So hit Y and then enter. Depends on the your internet speed. This sometimes might take a couple of minutes because I already installed, created a similar Conda environment before. And it's just going to retrieve those cache from my computer, so it should not take very long. Okay, now we have everything successfully created. Then we should be able to use the notebook. So the next step is that you want to also download the sample data if you haven't done so. The sample data, this is the same one we used in the last video about getting started with PostgreSQL, and we already load the data into the database here. So cities, right? And you can click here the column, you can see the information. So this is the one that we used last time. You can also click here. If you use PostgreSQL Admin, then you can right click, view data, and then all rows. It's going to let you preview the data. So this is the example that we used in the last video. We are going to similarly do something with this database. We're going to click Jupyter notebook to this database, and then you can do some spatial query. Okay, let's go back to the tutorial, the website, and from here, if you click the upper right corner and then select .ipynb, we want to download this one to our computer. So what you need to do is you click, and then you can download it to any directory you want. I'm going to download to my, for example, downloads folder. Hit save. Okay. Then it should be right now in the notebook environment. After that, you can similarly open an Anaconda prompt, or you can open your terminal. I'm just going to open the Windows terminal. If you right click, if you don't see this option, you can go to your Windows Microsoft Store, and then just search Windows PowerShell. Then you should be able to find it once you install. You should be able to have this option. But you can also use Anaconda prompt. It's the same, but I like this one better because if you right click, you will directly open your Windows terminal within this directory, so you don't have to navigate the directory. Okay, so once we have the terminal open, then we can activate the Conda environment. So what we need to do, Conda activate SQL. So this is the environment that we just created. You can also just type Conda list to take a look at all the packages that we have installed. So in this video, we're going to use a couple of these packages. So the first one is IPython SQL. This is the one that allow us to execute SQL command statements directly within Jupyter Notebook. So we need to basically load the extension. Also the SQL Alchemy. So this is the one that we can also use that to connect to the database. Then we can use the so-called the create engine. So we have a connection. Then you can use this one to use some other packages to actually to query the data. So these are two ways you can use the PostgreSQL here in the Jupyter Notebook. Certainly, we also use the notebook and also pandas. Once you have downloaded the notebook example, then if you activate the Conda environment, after that you can just type Jupyter Notebook and hit enter. It's open Jupyter Notebook within your browser. Then you just need to click. It's open the notebook within your browser. We're going to go through here these two sections. This is pretty simple and straightforward video. So first we need to again, you need to make sure that you load this CSV into your database. If you haven't done so, watch my last video to see how to load the data. And so next, I'm going to show you here. This is the, if you see the percentage sign, this one in Jupyter Notebook is called magic command. So magic command is just similar that kind of like in some spatial command that you can use to load extension, or you can load some packages. And so if you see this one, this won't work in the regular Python. Okay, so don't run this one in the Python terminal. This one, it basically only works in the Jupyter notebook. And when we load the extension SQL, so then we can use something like a percentage sign and then SQL to indicate that, okay, this whole block is SQL statement. It's not Python. Okay, so what we want to do here is to run this one. And then the next one here, we need to import the OS. So because we want to get some environment variable. And let me show you here. If you just directly run this, you basically you're gonna get you're gonna fail because you need this whole block here is trying to get the environment variable because we haven't set this one up yet. And you need to make sure that you set up the environment, because in order to connect to the database, we need to authenticate the connection. So right now, because we haven't done the authentication, we haven't set up the environment variables in here. So localhost, this is pretty the same, and also the database, this is the name of the database that we were connecting to. If you go to the PG admin, right, so this is right now hosted on our local computer. The host is a local host, and the database, what we're trying to use here is STB. So if you're using other name, you might also need to change the name to whatever database you are connecting to. Next, I'm going to show you how to set up these two. In this case here, if you already know the username and password, so if you use the default one, the username most likely, if you go to, for example, the database, and then if you right click, see the properties, you will see here the owner, PostgreSQL, right? So this is the default user when you create a PostgreSQL database. So this is basically the username. If you don't want to set this one up, you can directly just delete this one, and then you can just type, for example, the PostgreSQL, and then the password. The reason that I want to use the environment, because I'm teaching, I don't want to expose my password. So that's why if I set up the environment, then if you go to, for example, for my the website that I showed you earlier, you should be able to see, for example, the output, right? But you don't see my password, because when this notebook is executed, it's actually retrieving the password from my computer, and it's not being shown directly. So this is a much better way to handle sensitive information. You can set that one as a so-called environment variable. And like I said, if you want to use a plain password, that's fine. For example, double quotes, and then whatever password that you use for your database when you connect to the database using the PG admin. And then we set up this so-called connection string. F basically in Python is a format, and if you see anything within the curly brackets inside, you can put a variable. So the variable is going to replace the content in here. So curly brackets user, basically this is the user. The string is going to be converted to this one. If you want to see exactly what the string look like, you can just pass this one and then Alt Enter. And this will be the string, right? So for now, because the username and the password is none, because we haven't set up this one yet. Okay, so I'm just going to Control G to remove, to go back to this one. Next, I'm going to show you how to set up these environment variables. If you're using Windows, you can follow the videos here. If you're using Mac or Linux, you can just Google then find out how to set up an environment on your computer. If you're on Windows, you just go here and then just type env, and then if you see this one, edit the system environment variables. If you click, then the lower right corner here, environment variables, you click. So this is where we set up the so-called conda environment variable for your system. So when this notebook is running, it's going to come here to retrieve the information. So first, what we need to do is to click this one, new, and then the variable name. You can use the same name that I use in here, or you can choose a new name, but you need to make sure that it's consistent. So I'm just going to copy this one, SQL, and then underscore user, right? So this one here, I know the user for this database is PostgreSQL, right? And you just type the name. So when this code block is executing, it's going to retrieve basically replace the user with a string of this one, whatever is set in here. And if I hit OK, hit OK, but I need to create another one. So this is the SQL username, but we also need a password. So SQL password, right? Right, change this one here, password, and this is where you enter whatever password you have. For example, I can just drag in here. This is not the correct password, but just going to show you like what it looks like. So when I click OK, and then OK, next we can restart the kernel, and let's take a look, see what happens. Restart, and then I run this one again, import this. Oh, so probably we might need to also restart the terminal, because when you open the terminal, it's by default all the environment have been loaded. So if it doesn't work, then we can just simply close the Jupyter notebook, and also close the close this one. You just hit Control C to close the PowerShell, and then we can go to the downloads folder again, right click, open this one again. This time it's work, right? We can just contact activate SQL, and then Jupyter notebook, and we repeat the same process. Open the notebook, run this one more time. Okay, so this time you should see this one, right? PostgreSQL, and then also the password. But usually you don't need to show this one because you don't want to expose the password. So you can simply just delete this one and this one, and then you can just execute this one. It still fail because the password that I provided is not the one. So I'm just going back. I'm going to fix the environment variable. I'm going to pause the video, and once it's fixed, I will come back. Okay, so I have fixed the password. So I went back to the environment variable interface, and then changed the password to the correct one for the database. Now we can connect to the database. Okay, so I'm going to run this one again. And so what you need to do, because this is just a regular Python string, and then if you run this one %sign SQL, that means this is right now we are trying to connect to the database, but we need to use this so-called magic command. So this is the required one. Once you connect, then it's going to show you, okay, connected. That means we have successfully connect to the database. If you go to the PG admin, not sure if it's going to show up here. Okay, so it shows up. Now you will see this one here. This is the PG admin. So the dashboard is going to show you how many connections right now to the database. Okay, so this is the one here for this PG admin. This is the connection that we just established. Once we connect to the database, then we can do some queries. So I'm going to go back to the Jupyter notebook, and there are two ways they can do the SQL query. If you have one %sign and then SQL, then you can directly write something here after. So everything is like one line. But usually we want to use this way. You can use double %sign and then SQL. Make sure no space. Okay, so it needs to be double %sign and then SQL. Then you can write a statement somewhere in here. So the statement, you can have an empty space. You don't really need to have an empty space. And so once you have this one, this statement here is a SQL statement, similar to what I showed you in the last video. All these statements right now, you can directly within Jupyter notebook to query the database. So if I come back here to the installation this notebook, and if I just execute, you should be able to see the result. Like the reason also, most of the, you can just directly copy and paste. I forgot to put this like uppercase. Most of the time, like SQL reserved keywords, you want to use uppercase, and this one is the table, so it's lowercase. And then we're going to limit just 10 records, because this one we have thousands of records. We don't want to show like all of them on the notebook. If indeed you want to see this one, you can also run this one. We're going to show you here 1,249 rows affected. So that means all the data have been selected and displayed here in this table. If you go back to the website in here, right? So some of those I can choose to actually hide the output. So this one here, I don't show you the output because it's just too long. I can set this one directly using the Jupyter notebook if you want to hide the output. But this is a good way because you can see the command, you can also see the output. If you're using the traditional way, you only see the command. For example, I put all the command statements in here, but you can only imagine what's going to the output going to look like. So this is a much better way because you can see the result, you can see the output, you can see the source code all together on one single page. And so this is how you can connect to the database using IPython SQL. Let's recap what we just did, right? We created the conda environment, and then you can activate the environment. After that, you can open the notebook. So first of all, you need to make sure that you use this one, low ext extension SQL, and then you can import the OS. Then you can set up these two. So if you're trying to run this notebook on your computer, most likely if you have a database on your computer, localhost, you don't have to change the database name. Whatever database you use, you can look at the name of this database. For example, this one. If your name is different, then you need to change the name to the one you're using, and then you can set up the conda, the environment variables on your computer. So I just set up these two, show you how to set up this. If you're using Mac computer, then you can go online to find out how to set up conda, the environment variable, or you can just replace whatever is a regular string. It's fine as well. But if you're recording a video or if you want to show someone else, you don't want to expose your password here directly within a notebook. So this is why it's better to set up environment variables, and then we basically put all the things together as a single string. Then we can execute the SQL, basically connect to the database. Once it's connected, then we can do the query, SQL query. So for example, we want to select all the records. You can also just limit to 10 cities. So this is the first way that you can connect to the database and then can do a query. The next one is that I want to show you how you can, let me maybe just clear the output here for this one. Output, current output here. The second one is using SQL Alchemy. So Alchemy is another database that you can connect to PostgreSQL, or you can all other database engines. So there are all kind of different databases. So PostgreSQL is just one of them, and SQL Alchemy you can connect to multiple one. And so in here we're just going to import the library and also import this function named create engine. The create engine here, the connection, the string also comes from here. So it's the same idea. So we want to reuse this one, and so this is the string. It basically shows you indicate the username, the password, and the host. It can be an IP address or it can be a local host, the name of the database. We're just going to execute, and then once you create the engine, you can pass this variable pass this engine to a new variable. And so for example, once you have the database, let's say we want to see how many tables within the database. If you go to the PG admin, you should be able to open the database, and then if you click schemas, from there you should be able to see, for example, how many tables, right? How to if you want to get the table names programmatically, you can use the command line that we're using in here. So we're going to use the so-called inspect. So SQL Alchemy has a lot of classes, functions, but sometimes if you just want to use a specific one, you can from something import the specific function or class. Once you have the inspect, then we can pass in the engine. So we're going to inspect the engine and to get the table name. So just execute. Let's take a look. So here you can show, for example, all the tables, like spatial reference, countries, US cities, and cities. It's the same as you see from here, exactly the same. So everything that you can do using the PG admin, you can most likely do it here directly within Jupyter Notebook. The reason for this is that if you're more familiar with Python, you only want to query some data, but you want to return the data, and then you can use the data for some analysis in Python. Then this is the best way. So connect to the database and then get the table, get the records, everything. You can do that easily. You can also pass in some SQL statements to directly query the data and then return the data as pandas data frame. So pandas is a very popular Python library for dealing with tabular data. So there are a lot of things you can do with the pandas, but this one just shows you one simple example. You can directly use the panda read underscore SQL. Then this is the SQL statement. Then you can pass in the engines, right? So basically this is establish the connection, and then we're going to query the database, return the result as the data frame, and execute this one just to show you what the output, right? So this is the same as the above that I show you here in this one. So we execute the SQL statement, then this one can pass into the data frame, and then you can say, for example, this one back to as a CSV to your computer. And this is how you can do some data. For example, after you display the data frame, you can just df and then dot, hit tap on your keyboard. You should be able to bring up all kind of functions available for the panda package. And then if you want, you can save this one, for example, to CSV, right? And then you can parenthesis shift tab, you can bring up the function definition. Then you can pass in, for example, if you want to save the output to a CSV, double quote, and then maybe you can do let's say cities selected .csv, and hit control enter. Then if you go back to, for example, the downloads folder, you should be able to see this one, like cities.selected CSV. This is how you can query. So in this way, you can get the data out of the database. And then if you want to do some analysis with this table, you can certainly continue to do analysis using the SQL, but sometimes it's more convenient to export the data. So you do some query, you get the data you want, then you can do analysis outside the PostgreSQL or PostGIS. So this is how you can do that. And these two ways, both of them have their pros and cons. So the magic command SQL, basically you just want to show the result directly. If you just want to query and then show the result, then this one probably is easier because you can copy any SQL statement from anywhere. And what we need to do is just to put any SQL double percentage sign and then SQL, you can paste the command. Again, all the commands that we're running here, you can run them in QGIS or directly within a PG admin, right? So anytime if you want, you can just go to the database and then right click query to, right? You can just paste whatever command you use and just execute. You're going to get the same result. But the nice thing about this is that I don't have to type those commands right now when I'm doing the demo. I can just execute and then explain it's going to save some time, but you can also see the result directly using the website, so you will be able to see the result. So this is what we're going to use in the next videos for this tutorial series, how to use this. I'm going to add more here, so you can basically bookmark the website, and then you can come back later to get more information about this. And you can also, for example, download the notebook. You can also print this one as a PDF if you want. You can also make changes. You can suggest edits if you want. So I also try to set up this one in Binder. So in the future, you can directly click this one, and then it will open this notebook. Then you can run that interactively. So in that way, you don't have to install anything on your computer, but you'll still be able to explore and then execute the source code directly within notebook using just a browser. Okay, so that's all for this video, and I hope you find this one useful. And if you can set up this one on your computer, then you can continue to follow this video to do spatial query the database using PostgreSQL statements or PostGIS. Hope to see you in the next video. Okay.